So what I hated most about being in prison was literally in my bed. I meant my head. Or was it in my bed because it was in my head? Let me ask you a question. So in the morning when you get up, before you go to work or before you go to school, no matter who you are or what age you are, do you make your bed before you go to work? And do you make your bed before you go to school? Do you make your bed when you get up to start your day? Do you make your bed at all throughout the day? That's the question I want to ask you, because if you can answer that question, you can understand the dilemma I had while I was incarcerated and the struggle I had while I was incarcerated. And I spent a lot of time incarcerated. So this particular issue was a constant in my life that never went away. And that was the number one thing that I didn't like to do in prison was make my bed. That's right. That's the number one thing I didn't like about prison, was having to make my bed. I didn't want to make my bed when I was a kid. My parents didn't make me make my bed when I was a kid. But when I went to prison, you got to make your bed. If you don't make your bed, well, the police have a hissy fit and they put you in the dungeon, lock you in the hole, and take away the little bit of rights that you do have. So you have to make your bed. Here's the thing. When I was in boot camp, at 16 years old, I went to boot camp. I did about 6 months in boot camp. In boot camp, you had to make your bed. So I learned to make my bed. I had a little pride in making my bed. I think maybe when I got home from boot camp, I might have made my bed for a little while, but I didn't make my bed for long. Because, I had it institutionalized from boot camp, or indoctrinated from boot camp in my head, that making my bed was the right thing to do to start my day. So I would get up early in the morning and make my bed. I'm sure it made my mom and dad happy. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. That's not a conversation I had with them. I guess I could ask them, I wish I could have asked them, did y'all want me to make my bed? But I don't ever recalling my parents ever forcing me to make my bed or wanting me to make my bed. I really don't have memories of my parents bothering me behind making my bed. So I grew up my whole life hating to make my bed. So when I went to prison, this is not boot camp no more, because now I'm going as an adult. I'm in prison. And they want me to make my bed. And I'm like, man, I don't want to make my bed. So let me tell y'all what I did to solve the problem of having to make my bed. I literally made my bed and slept on top the covers. I never went underneath the covers, because to go underneath the covers usually meant that I had to make my bed in the morning. And I did not want to make my bed in the morning. I just wanted to get up and get busy and didn't want to have to be bothered about the bed. And it wasn't even so much about making the bed. It was the fact that the officers, I have to hear their mouth, make your bed up, make your beds up, get up, get out them covers, make your bed up, work call. So I didn't have to hear their voices, because my bed was already made. So that was one less thing that had to irritate me about being in prison, was just sleeping on top of the covers. A lot of people like getting underneath their covers. Listen, did I never not get underneath my covers? No, I got underneath my covers. When it was, in Louisiana, there ain't no air conditioning and all that stuff in Louisiana. So it gets cold in them icebox dorms. So sometimes you got to get underneath your covers. And so sometimes I would get under the covers and have to make my bed. And it also depended on what prison or jail you was in. A lot of those parish jails, them guards don't care. You in there all day, they leave you in there all day, and it is what it is, so you don't have to make your bed. But when you get to the state prisons, you have to make your bed, because there's structure and order in the state prisons, and the guards run everything. So if you don't make your bed, you get rolled. And even in the dungeon, if they give you a mattress, they expect you to make your bunk. And if you don't make your bunk, they're going to take the mattress from you. That's how I learned what a Peely Posturepedic was, because some of them dudes would get put on write-ups, and one of the punishments that you can get in prison behind not making your bed or getting write-ups and infractions is they will literally take your mattress from you. That's one of your punishments. You could lose phone time, you could lose canteen time, you could lose good time, and you could lose your mattress. That's right. That's a real punishment in prisons in Louisiana. If you don't behave yourself and you go to Kangaroo court and they find you guilty, they can give you 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months with no mattress. And so they take your mattress from you, and you don't have no mattress, and you have to sleep on the cold steel or the cold concrete, whatever the bed's made out of. Sometimes it's steel, sometimes it's concrete. In the South, a lot of times it's steel, mostly. So you got to sleep on that cold steel, and they don't leave you no mattress. They don't leave you no mattress, no blanket, no pillow, no nothing. All you got is your state clothes, and so you got to sleep on top that cold steel with your state clothes on. So when the dudes would get their mattresses back, other dudes down the tier, they'd be like, say, man, how I feel to get that mattress back? And dude be like, man, I ain't gonna lie, bro. It feel like I got a Peely Posturepedic up in here. And dudes would be like, it feel like a peely posturepedic? He said, man, it feels so good, bro. I ain't gonna lie, man. It's better than a waterbed, you heard me? They said, better than a waterbed? He said, man, I ain't had a mattress in 2 months, dog. This is the best feeling ever. I'm telling you, man. You can't tell me this ain't no peely posturepedic. And so that's what them dudes would do. You know, they act like they got a peely posturepedic. So a lot of people, you know, I even seen dudes, they would get so institutionalized with getting their mattress taken from them that they wouldn't even take the mattress ever again. They'd be like, when the officer, because what they'll do is they send an orderly down the tier, and they put a mattress in front your cell. And when your cell door racks back, they tell you go get your mattress. And dudes will be like, say, Sarge, I don't want it. And the sergeant be like, what you mean you don't want it? He'd be like, man, I don't want that mattress. I don't need it no more. I done got used to without it. And so they got dudes who live in the dungeon. They don't never take the mattress, because to take on that mattress would mean that they're giving in to the man. And so them dudes want to prove to the man, look, I don't need nothing you got. I'll sleep on this hard concrete till I die. And their backs all bent. You know, because you see some of the dudes who live like that later on during your incarceration. You see some of them old timers, and they walking around the dorms with their backs bent out of shape, because they ain't never took a mattress, right? So, man, making your bed, back to making your bed. So I'm in the dorm one day, and so sometimes I would miss breakfast because I did not want to make my bed. I'm like, man, I ain't making this bed. So I remember one day, I really wanted to go to breakfast. It was work call, and I knew it was gonna be a hard day's worth of work, and it was gonna be super hot outside, and I knew I needed to get me some food in my system. So I said, let me go get this chow and see if they got something I like. I told y'all before, one thing I liked that the prison served is something that most people didn't like, and I can get extra on my tray. And that would be whenever they served, you know, SOS. And so I like that biscuit and that gravy on top of that biscuit. And so I would go get it, right? I gotta watch my back. They just passed a law in Louisiana where you gotta have you can't have, hands free when you're driving. So I just drove by a state trooper, and I didn't want them bothering me. So I had to, I'm looking through my rear view, y'all, I'm riding dirty because I say I don't commit no more crimes, but I know it's a crime to ride around with the phone in my hand, but that's what I'm doing because that's what I felt like doing. So I have to live with the consequences if I get busted. Anyway, so, I got up, I went to breakfast, and when I went to get to breakfast, I didn't make my bed. I got back, they had officer, it was a female officer working the dorm. She wrote me up. I went to Kangaroo court, man. This time, actually, when I went to Kangaroo court, I remembered, I'll never forget this. They had this big old heavy set captain who worked off and on the different shifts. And he was the captain during that shift. And he was the one holding Kangaroo court. And I remember I went to Kangaroo court, and he asked me, he said, who's gobbling them up? I said, gobbling them up? He said, don't play crazy. You a convict. I see your record here. You've been doing this a long time. Who's gobbling up, and I'll make this write-up go away? And I'm like, you gonna make the write-up go away? He said, man, who's gobbling? Who's sucking who's sucking the penises? And I'm like, man, I don't know what you talking about, bro. He's like, man, you give me some names on who's doing the sucking or who's getting sucked. And he said, I can make this write-up go away. I'm like, nah, bro. I don't know what you're talking about, man. Furthermore, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Ain't nobody doing that, so I don't know what you're talking about. But you got a whole write-up on me for not making a bed. What you really gonna do to me? And so he put all kind of stuff over my head because I had been write-up free at that time, so he couldn't do nothing because it was a minor infraction. So he gave me 60 days over my head, loss of good time, and 60 days over my head. For which he gave me 60 days loss. I never forget this. He gave me 60 days loss of good time over my head, and that was flat time. So it's like I didn't have no good time to lose because I was doing two consecutive sentences. I was doing a consecutive sentence that was flat, and my next sentence that was going to serve after the consecutive sentence we had good time. So I was still in the middle of my flat sentence, so he wasn't going to be able to take that anyway. But he put visitation over my head and everything else for this amount of time. And I remember going back telling some of the dudes in the dorm what he did. They said, yeah, and the next day the write-outs come. So in Louisiana, they put all your information on the write-out sheet, so you could see who was found guilty of the write-ups and who was found guilty of the minor infractions or the major infractions, and what their punishment was. They put it on top of the microwave for everybody to see in the whole prison. They expose all your business. That's the way it is in Louisiana. So you see the write-ups, and everybody, there was only like 2 people who were found guilty. The captain who worked that night, it was a bunch of people dismissed. I'm assuming everybody who got dismissed was the ones who told him who was gobbling up gobbling it up. And so I got rolled up because I didn't make my bed. After that, man, I was like, man, I ain't even going to breakfast, man, because I'm tired of dealing with this bed. If I slept in the covers, I wasn't going to go to breakfast because I didn't want to have to deal with getting written up again or having officers bother me. Now, if I slept on top of my covers, obviously I woke up, the bed was already made. And the way I would sleep on top of my covers, they had these heavy coats, these super heavy coats. I would use those coats as my blanket, and I would just put that over me, you know, and I would lay down on my pillow, and I'd wake up and I just have to tighten my bed up a little bit because, you know, you sleep on top the covers, you got to keep it nice and tight like a military made bed. You got military, you know, the green military covers and everything too. So that's the thing that I hated most about being in prison. It might sound mundane, but the mundane is sometimes what we talk about here on the Pen and the Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube, where we do things different, like talk about not making your bed. I get it. You know what I mean? There's enough channels talking about, you know, the riots on the big yard and who was the toughest dude, who was the best shot caller and all that. I'm giving you something different. I didn't want to make my bed. There's a lot of people in prison who are treasure trolls, and they do not want to make their bed neither. So my question to you is, if you've never been to prison and you're out here in society, do you get up and make your bed there? Listen, I think making your bed can be a good discipline. It's a good indication that you're a disciplined person, and you have discipline in your life, and you can function and get your day started with, you know, taking care of your chores. Some of us don't. I'm a creative person. I do a lot of stuff. I'm a multitasker. Making my bed has never been a priority when I was a kid. I didn't like doing it when I was in prison, and I still don't like doing it today. I will occasionally do it if my wife really wants me to, and I know my wife is ex-military too, so she believes in making the bed. So you know, there's that too. But anyway, give me a like, subscribe, and hit that hype button, and share this video, and go back and watch some of my other videos. I got some really good content coming out soon, y'all. I'm gonna tell y'all, I'm giving you a heads up. I'm about to tell a story in the next maybe week or so about what happened to me when I was in prison, and it was about somebody testing my manhood, and it's a story I have not told on this channel. And you know, I got hundreds of videos and I still haven't told the story, so keep an eye out for that, and you know, be ready for some good stuff that we're gonna do, man. Like and subscribe, man. Let's get it.